Hello everyone, my name is Laura. This is my channel, Laura's Little Library, and welcome to today's video, which is a romance reading vlog / recommendations. So with this video, I'm kind of smushing two things into one, where I'm going to talk about some of my favorite romance authors and books that I read, as well as make it a vlog and read some new romance books with you, just to help get you in the mood for Valentine's Day or Galentine's Day, however you celebrate it. If you are just sitting at home reading books, then I will have some recommendations to talk to you about and read some books that I'm really excited for. So first thing I have to do though is I have a little mini haul I want to do first, and then we'll get into the rest of the video. So first off, of course, I have Onyx Storm. I feel like this should be fairly obvious, by Rebecca Yarros. I'm currently reading it. I am so excited. I pre-ordered it, but it took forever to get here, partly because they shipped it late, and then after that we also had a huge snowstorm which delayed it quite a bit. So I'm very excited that I finally have my hands on a copy of this. So happy and relieved. So I'm hauling this. I also have Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, and this is the new Grady Hendrix book that came out this past January. So this book, like I said, it's Grady Hendrix's new book. It's these pregnant teens in Florida who are sent to this home to carry out their pregnancies in secret and away from society, and they come across this book full of witchcraft, which they're not supposed to have, and I'm really excited to read this. I've heard great things about it. It'll be really great for spooky season. I'll probably read it sometime in the summer though. One of my most anticipated releases for 2025, of course I have many anticipated releases for 2025, so you should definitely watch that video that I've posted and keep an eye out for future ones, but one of the ones that came out in January that I'm just so excited for was A Language for Dragons, and this is by S.F. Williamson, and this is like a historical fantasy that has strong themes of linguistics and obviously dragons. So there is a war, or they're about to go to war with dragons, and our main character has been recruited as a linguist in order to crack the code of the dragons, kind of like their language. So it's everything for me. It's historical, it's fantasy, and it's language based. This could very easily be my favorite book of 2025 if it goes well. So I'm so excited, and oh my gosh, oof, oh my gosh, okay. And of course I do have a couple of romance-esque books to haul in this video. So first up is Immortal by Sue Lynn Ten. This is like a companion to the duology series by this author. It's just another little story in the same world, and I'm really excited. This is like forbidden love, fantasy, mythology. You deal with immortals. Somebody is trying to save the immortal realm and somebody else is trying to take it down. So I'm really excited because I loved the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology by Sue Lynn Ten, so I'm really excited to read this, and it's a gorgeous book. So there's that. And then the final book I have, so quick haul in this little vlog video, is actually one that I am hoping to read in this video because it is the newest book by one of my favorite romance authors. So it is Beg, Borrow, or Steal, and this is by Sarah Adams. I have been obsessed with Sarah Adams books literally since Practice Makes Perfect came out. I read it, and I've started reading Sarah Adams' backlist ever since, and I have been loving them. So when I saw that there was a new one that came out this past January, I knew I needed to get my hands on it. So Beg, Borrow, or Steal, honestly, I don't really know what it's about. I just know that it's Sarah Adams. Oh my gosh, I just read the description and I love this. Okay, so our female main character, Emily, is a romance writer, and she absolutely hates, she is rivals with our male main character named Jack. So he goes off, he's about to get married, but then he breaks off the engagement and moves back to Rome, Kentucky, which is where some of the other books are set, and he actually moves in right next door to her, and so they hate each other, they push each other's buttons. He's also a mystery writer, but he writes under a pen name, so I don't think anybody knows that he's a writer, versus she is a romance writer. I love enemies to lovers, I love rivals to lovers, and I love writers as main characters. This is very much giving me like the Emily Henry Beach Read vibes of like, you've got two writers who write in two very different genres, but they end up being neighbors right next to each other. And so he just wants to write his books and renovate his house, and she wants to write her books and live in peace. I'm so excited to read this. Honestly, like, I was a huge fan of Beach Read, but I think the way that Sarah Adams is going to do it is going to be magical and going to take me to a whole nother place. So this is one of the books that I plan on reading in this video, and I have officially hauled it, and I'm so excited. Some of the other books I will be reading include Gild by Raven Kennedy. This is the library version. I checked this out from my local library after I finally got a library card there. Oh my word, it took forever. So I really want to start this. It is romance, dark fantasy romance kind of. I've heard lots of things about it, good and bad. And then actually somebody who I know in real life just read it, and they were like, oh, it's so good. And I did not expect them to read this kind of book at all. So now I am super intrigued, and I really want to read this. And it's due back at the library on February 13. So I have a good deadline to hold me to reading this, and then hopefully I can get the other books from the series afterwards. So I've got these two, and then I have one more. And then I have one more book on my Kindle actually, and it is Body Check by Elle Kennedy. It's one of her hockey romances, but I think it's one of her earlier ones. So this is my first book by Elle Kennedy. I wanted to read some of her other books, but they weren't available at the library, both physically and on my Kindle, because I have a Kindle Fire which came out like 15 years ago. So I can't use Libby on it. I can only use Hoopla on it, and Hoopla I have found to be kind of limiting in the books that they have for ebooks and audiobooks. So I'm a little bummed, but I'm getting back into my Kindle, and if I prove to myself I can read consistently on my Kindle, maybe one day I will get a new one. But for now, I'm going off of what Hoopla has. So because I have been reading a lot of Sarah Adams' backlisted romance, she actually had a couple of sports romance, the rule book and the cheat sheet, and I loved those. And those, along with Lyssa Kay Adams' books with her book with the hockey player and the baseball player, it honestly makes me think I would probably love sports romances. So I'm dipping my toes in, and I'm finally allowing myself to dive into sports romance and seeing what I think of them. And so I'm starting off with Body Check, and I have actually already started this. I am 100 pages in. It's like 250 pages, so I'm not quite halfway, but I am loving it so much already. Super happy, super excited about that. But those are the three books that I will be reading in this vlog. So I am gonna go do some more reading, and then we'll come back and I will talk about some of my favorite romance authors and books. Hi friends, time for a reading update. So I have been reading Body Check by Elle Kennedy on my Kindle here. So I am on chapter 16, which is 116 pages out of 250. So I am almost halfway, and I gotta say, I'm enjoying it, but purely for the smut. There's not much else I'm enjoying about it. Like, I like the sports aspect of it, but I feel like I'm still waiting for that to truly kick in a little bit. Like, our main character, her dad is the owner of the hockey team, and there's a lot of drama going down with that, and I do like reading about what's going on. But our main character, I am not attached to her at all, because she has a boyfriend back in California, but they're on a break, and she starts sleeping with this hockey player, and she is very much like, I want to settle down, get married, have like that white picket fence life, is kind of like how she's describing it almost. But then she's sad with her current boyfriend because while he offers all that, he doesn't really want to get intimate with her, and that's hard on her. So she starts sleeping with this hockey player while they're on a break, and now she's not really conflicted because she's been wanting to break up with her boyfriend, but is continuing on with this hockey player even though he's offering nothing that she wants other than a love life. And I'm so confused by this character. I don't understand why she's making the decisions that she's making. I'm frustrated that she won't just break up with her boyfriend. He's like, I don't want to lose you, and she should just be like, I'm sorry, I'm moving on, I'm sleeping with someone else. Like, you know, I'm not super, I don't really like our main character. I don't know what she wants. I don't know if she knows what she wants, but it's not written in a way that like, oh, we're gonna go through this journey together. It's like she's confident, but then she contradicts herself. And I don't really like that. And then, of course, our male main character is just like every other. I've read his type before, you know, he's the arrogant playboy sports guy, and then he's done being a playboy, and then he meets her and he's like, I'm doing things that I shouldn't, but also she's different. And like, I don't mind it, but it's not unique, you know? I mean, maybe this was because it is one of Elle Kennedy's older books, maybe it was not as common back then, but I've read plenty like that and I don't mind it. But this book is feeling very 3-star. Like, the only thing that really has it going for it is the smut. Which, of course, yes, I'm reading it for the smut, but not just that, you know, that's like half of it. There should still be a plot and characters and development outside of that. I am hoping to finish it tonight, and then I will move on to either Gild by Raven Kennedy, because this is due at the library the day before Valentine's Day, and so I do need to get on to reading this, but honestly, I'm most likely going to pick up Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams, because I know that I'm just gonna fly through this. So chances are I'm going to finish Body Check by Elle Kennedy and then pick up Beg, Borrow, or Steal, and then when I'm done with this I will pick up Gild. But yeah, if I get this done today, it's Thursday, hopefully get this done by like the weekend, and then I'll have next week to read this basically. So that's the plan. I have a few things obviously I need to do today, but like I said, I've got some time tonight, so if everything goes to plan, I should be able to finish this, and I will update you with my final thoughts on that book, and then we will start Beg, Borrow, or Steal. Let's get into some of my favorite romance books that I have on my shelf and talk about some of my favorite romance authors. I, for context, have really only started reading romance kind of this past year, a little bit longer. It was not a genre that I specifically gravitated towards. I always enjoyed it though. If there was an author that became very popular with a new book coming out and the premise sounded interesting, sure, I would pick it up. But only in this past year or two have I really developed the tropes that I like to read, authors that are auto-buy in the romance genre, or just reading books because they're romance and I like the plot or the characters rather than it's something that everybody else is reading so I have to. So I thought I would just go through some of my favorite authors and books that I have. That being said, a lot of these are going to be popular authors, so I'm going to pick out some of my favorite books by them and explain why. So the first author that I really want to talk about is Casey McQuiston, and I actually only have Casey McQuiston's book, The Pairing. This is her most recent release. The book that kind of started it all is Red, White, and Royal Blue. This was a very popular book when it came out, and like I said, this is her newest one. I have read this one and I liked it. This is not one to get emotional for, it is one to just read and have a smutty good time. So nothing wrong with that, but just know that going in. This book in particular follows a couple who booked a wine tour in Europe across like France and Italy and Spain, and then they broke up on the plane. They didn't do the wine tour, but then each of them still has a voucher, and as time goes by, the window to use the voucher closes, and so each of them independently decides to just go on the wine trip alone, and then they end up going on this wine trip alone together, and they issue a challenge to see how many people they can sleep with on this trip. So like I said, very smutty. Not for, I mean, like, yes, it's emotional, but that was not the good part of this book. The good part was the smut. The emotion was actually not that great. But Red, White, and Royal Blue was my first, like, pure romance for the sake of romance book, and I loved it. of course, so I have to bring that up in this video, and I have to honor Red, White, and Royal Blue. Next up, we have Lyssa Kay Adams, and she is the author of the Bromance Book Club. Now, I own and have read all of these books. I love them. I used to talk about them every year on Valentine's Day, as long as I was doing this channel. Like, they were a huge thing for me. And of course, you know, there are the aspects of these men who are reading romance novels in order to understand what women want in romance and in a relationship, because communication is hard, of course, and these romance books are written by female authors, and so it's kind of the idea of getting into the female mind. I mean, I loved it. This first one is kind of a sports romance where he's a baseball player whose wife is about to divorce him, and they were having some relationship issues, and so he joins this bromance book club in order to figure out how to kind of win her back and heal their relationship. What I love about this book, and really this entire series, is not something I would realize I love until later on, but I mean, the smut was amazing. The characters are so genuine and wonderful, and I love how realistic they seem to me. And the more you keep reading this series, because it's all people who know each other. So this is like the original couple that you know about, and then the second book it's like the friend of the wife, and then in the third book it's this other person in the club, and the fourth book it's a different person in the club, and it just builds off of each other. So by the time you get to the fifth book, that's the Christmas book, and they all have Christmas together. It is just such a huge family that is just unlike anything else to read. Alright, I have two more authors to quickly talk about in the contemporary and romance genre, and the first one, again, another very popular author, is Emily Henry. Her first book, Beach Read. I loved this book. It is enemies to lovers. I've realized that I love enemies and rivals to lovers. That is a huge trope that I love. I also love Grumpy Sunshine, but we'll get into that. And I do really like books where the main characters are writers or work in the writing and publishing industry, because I loved Beach Read and I loved Book Lovers. These were my two favorites. I didn't really like People We Meet on Vacation very much, because that was more Friends to Lovers, and even though Friends to Lovers is actually the trope that my real life would fit into, I prefer to read enemies to lovers, and I love strong literary themes in these books as well. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because I also like to write, so I love reading about people who write, about their writing, or not even just reading their writing, their stories, but just like reading about them sitting in front of a computer with a glass of wine, with like snacks and in a hoodie, and just cozying up and writing their book. Like, I love that. I don't know why, but I do. So these, as well as Funny Story by Emily Henry, these are my three favorite Emily Henry books. And this book follows, if you're unaware, two couples. They both broke up, and then one person from each couple gets together, and that leaves the two exes like sad and alone. And so they actually end up rooming together because they both just got broken up with. They don't have anywhere to live. So they room together, and then they want to get their revenge, and they end up falling in love. So it's not necessarily enemies to lovers, but there is a common theme of life sucks, my heart is broken, I need to keep living, grr. And so I really liked that. So these are my three favorite Emily Henry books. Happy Place, I wasn't the biggest fan of, and yeah, People We Meet on Vacation, couldn't really care about. That then leads me to the last major, I mean, maybe not the last major author, but the last author that I've read almost everything by. I don't think I've quite read everything, but I'm definitely working my way there, and that is Sarah Adams. Sarah Adams is my most recent obsession. I actually first read Practice Makes Perfect, and then I went back and read When in Rome, which this is technically the first book, but they're all companions because they all follow siblings within a family. This just is the oldest sibling and was the first to have like a romance plot line. And this is the most recent one. This is the third one in that kind of companion series. I am currently reading this and I am loving it. But with When in Rome, and the second book to that, Practice Makes Perfect, that was Grumpy Sunshine. And I loved the Grumpy Sunshine. I love it so much. And so it was this series here that just solidified that, yes, I love baking romances because I used to be a pastry chef. I used to be a baker. So I love bakery romances, writing romances, enemies to lovers, and then Practice Makes Perfect. I love Grumpy Sunshine. I love the different dynamics attract kind of thing, like with her being the good girl who owns a flower shop and him being like the tattooed bodyguard type. I loved it. I loved it. After having read all of these books and then reflecting back to what I like in romances, I thought of another thing that I should try. I thought I should try sports romances because I really liked the sports aspects in Lyssa Kay Adams' books, and there's a huge genre with lots of really popular books that people were enjoying, even people who aren't, like athletic or super into sports. So I thought I should give this a try. Lucky for me, when I went searching, that's when I realized that Sarah Adams actually has a couple of sports romance books. So I then proceeded to buy the rule book and the cheat sheet and read them, devour them, consume them, and love them. So I have read both of these books, and I think part of it is I love how Sarah Adams writes her characters. I love how Sarah Adams writes plots. The relationship between the characters, even though the cheat sheet is friends to lovers, I loved it. I don't like friends to lovers books because to me the dynamics always feel off, and I don't like the writing of the characters, and I don't like all the backtracking that happens. That's just my personal opinion. And yet when I read the cheat sheet, I still loved it, and I read the rule book and I adored it. So again, part of it is I love how Sarah Adams, I love her writing, I love her characters, I love how it's a romance book, but she keeps the plot important and intertwined with the romance, so it makes sense why I'm reading this book for more than smut, but also as a romance. So she is very quickly one of my favorite romance authors. I will continue to read everything she publishes, and I am just so happy with it. So if you haven't read anything by Sarah Adams, I would highly recommend either check out her sports romances or her small town romance. That's the other thing. I am such a sucker for small town. Both Sarah Adams and really a lot of Christmas and holiday books kind of told me that, because so many of them are small town. And then the last author and book that I want to give a shout out on some of my favorites of all time would be Ashley Herring Blake with her books Delilah Green Doesn't Care. I have Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. There are at least one, possibly two more. I'm not super sure, but there's at least another one. And this is honestly, I love how she does queer romances, because a lot of times when it comes to queer romances, I find that they are either way too emotionally invested, like it's so much trauma bonding, trauma processing, which is a good thing. But when I'm looking for a romance, I love good communication because I hate the miscommunication trope, but I also love it when it's not overly communication, when it's not every single little thing is traumatic and then talked about in their life. And I feel like Delilah Green Doesn't Care does a great job of balancing this, of being queer can be quite traumatic. I know this because some people just hate us for who we are, unfortunate, and it hurts, of course. And so you can't have a modern romance that is queer without some sort of feeling of it, but at the same time, I would love to see us move forward from that. I read to escape, right? And I don't want to read a book that has the same amount of trauma as I do for being queer. I want to escape into a world where you can just be queer and have a meet cute and have a healthy relationship and etc. and so forth. And so I feel like Delilah Green Doesn't Care does a good job of doing that, making it just like any other heterosexual romance, but queer. And that's what I really want to read. So I had to throw in Ashley Herring Blake here because of that, and I'm really excited to read more of this author's books. Now, those are all the contemporary. However, there are quite a few fantasy and romantasy books that I want to just quickly mention as being pivotal points in my growth to loving the romance genre, or books with very strong romance sub-themes and subplots. The first of which being For the Wolf, For the Throne, the Wilderwood duology by Hannah Whitten. I read this, I adored this, I devoured it. This was a book where I was reading it physically after having only read audiobooks for at least a year or two, and so my reading stamina was super low, but this got me back into physically reading. I loved the characters, the world building, the magic systems. It's a very religious magic system heavy, so that idea that the world is very overtaken by religion, it kind of rules everything, government, politics, magic, it all has to do with religion, so just know that. But it is kind of this first one is a little Red Riding Hood of, this girl has to be sacrificed to the wolf in the woods. We can all see where that's going, I would hope. And I loved the aesthetic and the atmosphere and the emotions I was feeling for it. So this was definitely kind of one of the first fantasy with very strong romantasy, if you will, plots that I was like, oh my word, I love this in fantasy too, not just with normal human beings, but in fantasy. The Shadows Between Us duology with the second book, The Darkness Within Us by Tricia Levenseller. This one came out like last year, and I really like it. These are much shorter, but this, again, it has magic, it is fantasy, but here you have a female main character who's so ambitious and so comfortable with her sexual identity, which is so incredible to read about. And it is very much your basic, the male love interest is darkness and shadows and mysterious, and she has her own motivations and agenda, and they fall in love not against all odds, but against all appearances, which is kind of ironic considering the plot of the first one is that she wants the king to marry her, but love has nothing to do with the equation. So these were definitely also very pivotal, and honestly, anything by Kerri Maniscalco. I'm holding up Jack the Ripper because it was the first book of Kerri Maniscalco's that I read. I read this entire series before moving on to Kingdom of the Wicked. I read after this, and now the Prince of Sin books I am reading and loving. But it all started off with Jack the Ripper, and if you're looking for an introduction into the romance genre, this is the perfect place to start, because this is like a slow burn friends to lovers that takes place over the 4-book series. And then there is Kingdom of the Wicked, which is a completely different world, completely different set of characters, different everything, but you still get the amazing writing from Kerri Maniscalco. But just know that the first book in the Kingdom of the Wicked is YA, and then the second and third book in the trilogy are very adult. So just have that going in, because if you don't know that going in, it might not be the most pleasant. But there's always this good, clean, fun, slow burn romance. Normally I don't like slow burn, but those who do it right, do it really right, and then I love it. It's either I hate it or I love it. No in between with slow burn. And then when it comes to a more cozy fantasy, again, or cozy romances, again, kind of like this series specifically, even though it is stalking Jack the Ripper, it is murder and detectiveness and stuff like that. There is also The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffin. These are not romance books. They are fantasy, but they have romance plots in them, of course. And I think they qualify to be in this video as some of my favorite, because they are just so aesthetic and the writing is just so beautiful, and the romance does a great job supporting the main plot, because the romance isn't the main plot, but it supports the main plot. It does it perfectly in every single one of her books. This is just the first one that came out, and so therefore the first one I've read, and every time she comes out with one, I instantly buy it, I instantly read it, and I pretty typically instantly love it. So Now, don't get me wrong, there are so many good romances, both contemporary and fantasy, and on my shelves, but the last one that I wanted to talk about in my favorites here is a trilogy by Adalyn Grace. That is the Belladonna trilogy. I do have the first book. I just have yet to haul it, which I will do literally right after this in this video. But the Belladonna trilogy, so Belladonna, Foxglove, and Wisteria. Belladonna was super popular when it came out, but I haven't heard much of people reading these books, which is this book was really good, so I don't know why people didn't read these books, which were also super good. It is kind of romantic-y in that you have your main character who will not die, but everywhere she goes, death kind of follows her, and she actually does talk to death. Something's going on with her. It's her romance with death, and then the second book, more characters come into play, and then the third book actually follows other characters that come in from the first book and the second book. And it is just a beautiful trilogy. I could not put it down, but it is very romance heavy. It is a romantasy. It's dark, but it's not trauma dark, you know? It's very fantasy mystical dark, which was so cool, and so I loved this trilogy. And this right here is the kind of romance that I want to read, especially romantasy, romance and fantasy. I love it. I love it. Those are kind of my favorites, the books that I enjoy the most, that are on my shelves, and how they've shaped how I figured out what romances I like. Going forward, I want to read more sports romances. I do. I want to read more sports romance because, as I discovered, I love them because of the team aspect. I love them because typically it's the male love interest who is the athlete and is on a team, and the fact that he has one or two buddies that he's super close with, and or an entire team that that setting, that relationship dynamic outside of the romance is something I love, something I very much enjoy. And also just seeing the women's different reactions to athletes, and whether they love the sport, they hate the sport, they're connected to the sport but they don't like it, and just all the fancy events that come with being around the sport, and just that dynamic adds something completely new to the relationship and the romance, and I've loved it every time. So I definitely want to read more sports romance. Definitely gonna continue reading romantasy, especially dark fantasy romance. I want to continue reading them. I'm so excited. I'm really starting to become a little bit of a romance girly, so very excited for that. All right, let's move on to the haul for this video, and then I will give you a reading update, and that'll kind of be the end of it. So I just have a quick 3 books to haul from the start of this year of 2025. The first, as I mentioned, is Belladonna by Adalyn Grace. It's the first book in the trilogy that I just talked about. I didn't buy this book because I read it after it came out, obviously, and I didn't buy it immediately. I only knew I really wanted to buy this book when I read the second book, Foxglove, and so I bought Foxglove hardcover because it was so pretty and I wanted to buy this book. But then it took me so long to get this one because it came out in paperback before I had bought it, and because it came out in paperback and then Foxglove came out, and so I knew I wanted to buy this hardcover. The third book came out, I bought it hardcover, and it just took me so long to just go online and order this hardcover. I kept thinking I'll see it in a store, I'll see it under a used section or something like that, and that just never happened. So I finally just sat down on my computer, ordered it hardcover new, and it just got here. So I'm really happy that I finally have the completed trilogy on my shelves, and I love it. The other 2 books I have to haul are new releases, just came out. They came out on February 11th, and so they were my books for this month's book budget for me, and they are The Forest King's Daughter, and this is by Ellie Blake. This sounded really good because you have childhood friends, and then, well, they were romantically involved, but childhood makes them sound super young, but the demon prince gave the daughter of the forest king a ring, but that caused a huge kerfuffle, and then they became at war, like their parents went to war and it became a whole thing, and now they're enemies and they absolutely hate each other. And the Forest King's daughter uses the power of the ring to defeat the demons, and so the demon prince needs to go and rectify his mistake, get that ring back, and so they have to go on a journey together to resolve this. And I get the feeling they fall in love again, and I am just so excited. I think the atmosphere and the aesthetic of like the woods and demons is going to be so cozy while also being just a really good fantasy. I'm so excited to read this. Also, look at this cover. It is so freaking pretty. Like, I love the colors. So I'm really excited to purchase this, and hopefully I will be reading it soon. And then the other book that came out on the 11th that I was so excited to get was the third book in the Emily Wilde series. So Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, and this is by Heather Fawcett. Like I said, it's the third book. If you haven't read the first one, you definitely should, but if you don't know anything about it, it is basically, it's kind of Victorian-esque times, maybe a little bit later than Victorian, like, I don't remember if it's late 18th century, early 19th, I'm not sure. It's historical, and you have a female professor who wanted to create the world's first encyclopedia of fairies, because fairies are real, from the little tiny brownies and pixies up to the courtly fae, the Seelie courts, and everything like that. And so she kind of goes on a journey to find, catalog, to create her encyclopedia of all fairies in existence. And she has an academic rival named Bramblebee, who just seems to get all the fame and all the goodness without putting in a lot of work, just having his TAs and students do it for him, which, yeah, that sucks. So it's very much an academic setting. It is very slow burn, rivals to lovers with fairies. And so I love the first two books, and I'm so excited to finally read the third book now that it's out. I feel like at this point with my book buying, I have more space in my budget to buy these new releases that I am highly anticipating, which makes me really happy because I'm finally almost caught up on all the books that I've read in the past that I loved but couldn't buy or wasn't buying books at the time. And so I feel like I'm almost caught up with that list, and then when I am, I could just focus on new releases, and that brings me so much joy. I'm so excited. So that's my mini haul, the books that I loved. Now let's get back to reading the books I've chosen for Valentine's Day. Hello everyone. So this update is going to be a reading update, obviously. I'm so sorry if you can hear construction in the background. So we are renovating our bathroom upstairs. Currently my partner and his cousin are working on they just put in new floor, little new mirrors going up, things like that. If you can hear construction noises, or if this clip seems very choppy, I apologize. But that's why I have the microphone really close to my face, to make sure that it's hopefully only picking up my voice rather than everything they're doing upstairs. So all that being said, let's get into the reading update. So as you know, I was reading Body Check by Elle Kennedy on my Kindle, and I finished it. And honestly, I'm rating it 2 stars. I'm so sorry. I was really excited to read this because I am intentionally diving into sports fantasy more. However, I know that this is, I believe, one of her older works. So some things age well, some things don't. So I wanted to keep my mind open about that as I was reading it. However, there were quite a few things that I had a hard time with this book, especially when it came to the characters and everything like that, and the plot, because I don't particularly think the balance between plot and romance was done very well. It seemed like it needed to be either more plot with spicy scenes sprinkled in, or need to be just a pure spice book with less plot. So because our main character, she is coming from California back to Chicago to visit her dad, who's going through a really hard and public divorce. And he is the owner of a hockey team. There are quite a few scandals going on with her dad, saying that he, fixed games, he paid off players, he fixed games, and he gambled on those games, as well as other things like alcohol abuse and things like that. And then on top of that, there were allegations of him cheating on his wife, but then also his wife cheating on him. And there's just so much going on there. And I understand that it's all very stressful for our main character, but I feel like the stress on her was not represented very well, which means it either needed to be less chaotic with all the scandals, or it needed to take a stronger forefront in the plot itself. So I had a hard time with that. Our male main character was like, I don't know, you know, like he was a cinnamon roll, but not a cinnamon roll, you know, like he's a hockey player, he's big, he's brooding, and there were some lines where I was like, yes, that's what I want, but other than that, he kind of let me down. Like, he seems kind of basic. Don't get me wrong, I love the fact that he's like, I'm from Michigan, I came from a smaller income home, and that's very important. But I think either we needed that to be more of his motivation for where he is now, or there needed to be other aspects to his personality. He just seemed very basic, and this is coming from somebody who is also a very proud Michigander. I always get so excited when books or characters are set in or from Michigan. I just get so excited. I love it. But like, I needed more of his personality than that. So, and also just, there was not enough build up for the conflict, like third act breakup. I was fine with how that was gonna happen because you know it's coming, but it just seemed so anticlimactic with the emotions of the characters and the events leading up to it. I just think it could have been done better. So I did rate Body Check 2 stars by Elle Kennedy. However, that doesn't mean I don't want to read any more of her books. I think I want to read more of her newer stuff, and I do want to keep reading sports romance because I did very much enjoy the hockey and the team relationship aspect of it. So yeah, but I'm happy I read it, and it was the first book that I like read on my Kindle again since kind of resurrecting it in a way. Also, I hate this case so much. It's literally falling apart at the seams, so hopefully I will be getting a new case soon for it. But anyway, so then moving on, the next book that I am reading physically is Beg, Borrow, or Steal, and I have read up to chapter 3, so I'm just at the very beginning of it. But I mean, I'm gonna love it. I love our main character. She is like the perfectionist here, let me do it, like watches out for her siblings even though she's not technically the oldest. She helps them with the balancing of the books and whatnot, and like she says her mind. She's not rude, but she's extremely direct, and she knows that about herself, but she also is not afraid to be herself too. Like, she holds back quite a bit, but I'm also looking forward to reading more and seeing how much she truly holds back. Like, with characters like this where like I can eviscerate someone with my words, I actually want them to have moments of eviscerating people and have me just be like, whoa, rather than like, hello, where is this character trait, where is this? I want that to be a thing. But so far, I love the attitude. I'm so excited. And classic, because I think she's grumpy, and her enemy is definitely more sunshine. Hi, Donatella. So the love interest is very much like the town cinnamon roll. Everyone loves him. She's the only one that doesn't love him, and they're both second grade teachers. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them both as teachers, but also both as writers, because she is secretly a romance writer, and I think he's secretly a mystery writer. So I am so excited to dive more into this, and I will be doing that today. So, and then when it comes to Gild by Raven Kennedy, that's confusing. I've decided to do the audiobook version of this because the physical copy was due back at the library and I don't have enough time to physically read it, but I did get the audio version. So I'm about 10% of the way through the audiobook, and oh my goodness, that's gonna be so dark, and I am so excited because it's a King Midas retelling. Your female main character is pure gold. So yeah, those are hopefully the 2 books. I do want to try and finish them both today. So let's get reading. Okay, and with that we have our final update. So I did finish reading Gild by Raven Kennedy. I read that all yesterday, and I am teetering kind of between a 2.5 and a 3 stars for this book, because here's the thing. It was very well written. I liked the writing. The plot was one of those plots. I haven't seen this in fantasy in a long time. I feel like I saw it in fantasy when I was younger, so maybe more in middle grade, of like, you don't really know what the end goal of the whole plot is of the series or even of the book. You just know that you have this woman, she's completely golden, she's in a cage, she is what they call a saddle for the king, and he is obviously very toxic and extremely manipulative. And that's the thing, that's where like the good writing comes into play, because they were also really good characters of he was so manipulative. So very well written, very mixed feeling characters. But then it was like, okay, now they're going somewhere. Okay, now this happens. Like, you don't have a climax necessarily and then like an ending, because it just kind of keeps going. But it is a 4-book series. But I'm like, what happens in the next like 3 books? Is it like the entirety of her journey getting back to the king? Does she turn against the king? And like, for some people that style of plot is really fun and really cool to read from. For me personally, I do like having somewhat of a roadmap, having some idea of where it's gonna go, because it makes the twists all that more exciting. Versus here, I feel like if it's a twist, it's like, well, I don't know anything that's going on, so it's just not my personal style of plot. But I'm not saying it's bad. However, huge trigger warnings. It is definitely for very mature audiences, so definitely look up the trigger warnings before you decide to read this book if you haven't. But yeah, those are kind of my 2 cents. Like, it was more so it wasn't for me rather than the book was not good. Like I said, well written, liked the characters. I just had a hard time with the plot, and I don't think I'll be going forward with the series because of it. If I have someone who's like, no, it's really good, it gets better, like you need to read it, maybe. But for now, no. My last little bit is that I am almost 100 pages into Beg, Borrow, or Steal, and I love it. I feel like it's from both characters' point of view. I always feel like the men, they're always in love first in these books. Like, he's like, I like her, I can't stop thinking about her, I'm annoyed at how much fun I have verbally sparring with her, versus she's like, no, I just hate him, that's it, there's nothing else here, maybe I think about him, but no. But the men are always like thinking about their feelings when it flips from hate to love sooner. And I mean, like, that's not a bad thing, I love reading it, but I would love it to be the other way around, just for once, for like diversity's sake. But yeah, I'm very much enjoying this. I love their little battles being neighbors, and like her turning the town against him working late at night, and then her like power washing the window. Oh my gosh, it is so much fun, it is so petty, it is so cute. So I am really excited to keep reading this the rest of Valentine's weekend. So thank you all very much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you like bookish content like this, hit the subscribe button. I post videos every week. I have other bookish social media linked down below, like a bookstagram. So if you're interested in more bookish content from me, you can go and subscribe, follow, all that jazz there. Again, if you liked it, give a thumbs up. Comment down below what you're reading this Valentine's Day weekend, what you have been or what you plan on reading. So yeah, love to chat with you. Again, thank you all very much, and until I see you in the next video, I wish you happy reading.